What's up, everybody? My name is Josh LaFleur from Late to Start Piano. Today I'm going to be giving you 5 reasons why starting out the piano can feel really difficult and why it is really difficult. And then I'm going to be giving you 5 fixes for each of those difficulties, 5 remedies to make it not seem as tough or as difficult when you are just starting to learn the piano. All of these things are going to make it a lot easier for you if you actually follow what I tell you to do. So first, I'll identify those tough areas or those kind of negative feelings, and then I'll jump into the positive feelings after that. So to start off, feeling like the piano is so hard to play, one is because there's so much to learn. So when you play the piano, especially if you're an adult, especially if you don't have any prior experience, you've never played the piano before, you've never owned a piano growing up or anything like that, you just decided at age 25, 35, 55, 75 that now, for whatever reason, you have time and you decided that you just will play the piano no matter what, there's a lot to learn. In that situation, there can be things like reading music, the hand coordination, finger dexterity, learning all the notes on the piano, learning how to control the feel as far as how you press down the keys. Again, just the motor control in your arms and your legs as well, because playing the piano is a full body instrument. A lot of people think it's just using your fingers. If you've been playing for a month, you know it's a lot more than just your fingers. There's a lot of movement that goes into playing the piano, and there's just a lot to learn, like everything I just said. And when there's so much to learn in a space, whether it's piano, whether it's learning how to code, whether it is learning how to cook a bunch of different things, whether it's learning how to box or anything, when there's so much to it, it can seem like this huge, huge mountain that you have to climb. And if you're starting at the very bottom, you're looking all the way up there. It can feel very intimidating and it can feel very confusing. And you probably feel a little bit lost when you're just starting out. That's okay. We're going to get into the fixes later, but that's point number one. Point number two is when you're just starting out, again, it's very easy to look at other people and feel bad about yourself. So this is another reason why learning piano seems so difficult, is because when you're just starting out, you're looking at all these other people who have been playing for 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, 1 year even. And they might be light years ahead of you in everything that you've done. And you're looking up to them kind of in that same way, like this huge mountain that you have to climb. And you're thinking to yourself, I could never get to that level. This person is just too good. And you're probably telling yourself you're too old to play now and you just can't do it. You don't have the mental sharpness maybe that you used to have, and you feel like you could never be as good as this person. Especially with social media, you have, I mean, literal savants everywhere you turn to on Instagram. You have 4-year-olds, 3-year-olds, 5-year-olds playing Mozart, and they're playing Beethoven, and they're playing Moonlight Sonata and Fur Elise and The Entertainer and all these different famous songs. And now you're looking at yourself, you might be 30 years older than them, 50 years older than that person, and you have no experience. And it can be very intimidating. Again, it can be a punch or a knife to your ego, because I mean, who wants to do something when they feel like they're terrible at it and that everyone else is a lot better? Not many people want to start that game. They don't want to start from square one. Okay, and that's just the way it is. That's just the way humans are. So that's point number two of why piano feels really difficult. Point number three is, again, we kind of just touched on it, but you can feel like you're starting really late in life and you kind of missed your boat, quote unquote. So especially if you're, let's say, 20, even 20 is older in the piano realm, even something like 15, honestly. When you have people playing at like 3 years old, 4 years old, if you're 15, if you're over 20 for sure, 25 and above, we'll say 25 and above, you might feel like you're too old. And again, you're seeing these younger kids or even older people that are playing these beautiful pieces, and you might say, wow, this person's 10 years younger than me. But that might be true. It also might be true that they have 5 years of experience. If they're 15 years old and they're playing some beautiful classical pieces, they probably started at 5. So they might have 10 years of playing experience, even though they're only 15 years old. And I don't think a lot of people realize that when they're seeing these prodigies and these savants who are playing really, really well, they probably literally have 10 years of experience at the age of 15. And again, if you're just starting out, maybe you have a full-time job, maybe you have a family, maybe you have other commitments, it's very easy to look at all of that and say, well, I didn't start playing when I was 3, so I kind of missed my boat. I'll have to do something else. It's very easy to get into that mentality when you're starting the piano later. Stick with me. I'm going to give you all the fixes for all these in a second. That was point number 3. Point number 4, again, kind of talked about it, but you feel overwhelmed with everything to learn, the reading the music, learning how to move about the piano, learning phrasing, learning songs, just going through the process of learning how to play a song and how to play it really well. Maybe you feel like that imposter syndrome, even if you can play a couple songs because that's all you know how to play. It can be very overwhelming, especially you might not know where to start. You might not know when to go to the next level. You might not know if you're practicing too much, if you're practicing too little, if you're doing something wrong, whatever. It can be extremely overwhelming, especially if you don't have a teacher who can kind of guide you through the process. It's tough. It's tough learning the piano, especially when you're older, but I promise it is worth it if you can get through that initial hardships, that initial time spent. If you can get through that, it's worth it, guaranteed. Point number 5 here is, again, the reading of the notes, I think, is a huge, huge thing. I've brought this up multiple times already, but that's such a huge thing if you're brand new to playing the piano, especially if you're older. A lot of people feel like they can't do it and they never will be able to, especially with the piano when you have 2 staffs and you have to look at the top staff, which is your right hand normally, and then you also have to read the bass clef or the treble or the bass clef notes for the left hand. So you have the treble clef in the right, you have the bass clef in the left, and you have to read 2 different rows, and they're not all at the same time. So they're coming in at different times. You might be holding your left hand down for a long time. Your right hand might be doing short notes. Maybe it's the opposite way. And I know when I first started in my first year, reading both clefs, the grand staff at the same time, it was tough. It was intimidating, and I went very slow, and it was kind of embarrassing, honestly, when you first start out, because it's like you're trying to play Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star or something like that, something super easy, some nursery rhyme, and you can barely do it if you're trying to read the music. And that's okay. That's how everybody starts off. That's just the way it is. But you can read music, I promise. It's not that difficult. It looks difficult. And depending on what you're playing, it can be difficult, but it's all about patterns. It's all about pattern recognition. The notes don't change, right? So treble clef notes stay with the treble clef. An A in treble clef is always an A. An A in the bass clef is always an A as well. They might be in different spots on each clef, but at least each of those clefs don't change. So once you kind of learn the pattern, once you start practicing it, once you start reading music 10, 20 minutes a day, then within a month, within 6 months, within 1 year, you're going to look back and say, wow, I did it. It's going to be something you can feel accomplished about and you can feel proud about in the moment as well. So enough of that. Time to kind of get into the fixes. Okay, so like I promised, here are all the fixes. First thing is, what do you do when you feel like there's just too much? You feel like it's too difficult. You feel like you missed your boat. Number 1 fix for this is mentally take it day by day. So like I just said, there's a lot to learn. It can be overwhelming. All you need to do is take it day by day. Set your practice schedule and just make sure you practice consistently. It might take a long time depending on how much time you practice, how many days a week that you're practicing, what you're practicing, how focused you are. But as long as you're practicing, as long as you're playing something for, let's say, 4 days a week, you're going to be fine. You are going to improve. You're going to improve month by month. You're going to improve within 6 months. And then once you hit that 1 year mark, you are really going to be a much better player than you were in the previous year. So that's the first fix. Mentally, don't get too overwhelmed. Take it day by day, piece by piece, and just, it's kind of corny to say, but just enjoy the journey, enjoy the learning process. Fix number 2 is kind of on the same lens, but when you feel overwhelmed, try to focus on 1 or 2 things at a time. So I just told you multiple times, when you learn the piano, there's 100 different things you have to learn. For the fix for this is focus on 1 thing at a time. Don't focus on your hand coordination, your arpeggios, learning all of your scales, how to use a sustain pedal, how to read music. what the notes are on the piano. Don't think about all of that all at once. Focus on one, maybe two things most. So if you are brand new at the piano, learn all the notes on the piano. And then you can even break that up. Learn all the C's. Where are all the C's on the 88 key piano? Okay, you know that? Great. What are all the G's? What are all the A's, the B's, the D's? And go right down the list. Don't feel like that's silly. Don't feel like you're not doing enough. If that's where you're at, then you are using great use of your time because you are getting something done. You're focusing on one thing and you're not in this state of hesitation and like a deer looking at the headlights of all this stuff they have to learn. You're focusing in and you're getting shit done. And that's the point. That's what you want to aim for. Okay, so focus on one or two things at a time. Like I just said, if you have to learn the notes, great. If you have to learn how to read the treble clef first and then the bass clef, great. If you have to focus on the sustain pedal, what a chord is, whatever it is that you're learning, just focus on that thing. Don't worry about everything else that comes with it as well, at least for now, at least within your 1 year of playing the piano. Just focus on one or two things at a time. And then point number 3 is you do want to set goals. So I've talked about this before a little bit. I've made a whole video about it, I believe. But you want to set short-term goals and long-term goals. Short-term goals I look at are things that can be accomplished within, let's say, 1 to 2 weeks. So if you're brand new at the piano, short-term goals are 1 to 2 weeks. Whether that's learning a scale, whether it's learning a couple chords, whether it's learning a song, even some kind of easy song, whether it's learning an arpeggio, whether it's learning proper fingering for a certain scale or a certain piece of music, should take you 1 to 2 weeks. You want to set these goals. You can have something to aim for. You want them to be quick, like the 1 to 2 week, because you want to be able to check something off and you want to make sure you're making progress and you want to be able to play as many songs as possible within that 1 to 2 week time. What you don't want to do is pick a song that's way too difficult for you and try to spend 6 months learning it and then you only learn 3 measures because you're wasting your time. That's wasting 6 months. What you want to do is pick very simple songs, either out of a method book or whatever your teacher recommends you, and play that song. You should be able to play it about 90% of the way within the 1 to 2 weeks for short-term goals. So 90% of the way means you have it under your fingers, you can play all the right notes, you can play it at the right tempo, and you have good phrasing, right? So what does all that mean? It means you can physically play the notes. It means you can play it at the tempo of the song, the target tempo, so 100 beats per minute, 120 beats per minute, you can actually play it. And the phrasing, you are coming in on time. So on beat 3, you're at beat 3. On the and of 4 beat, you're on the and of 4. If you can do all that within 1 to 2 weeks and you can do it well, then you've hit your short-term goal. The last 10% would be things like dynamics and expression. So things like, again, the dynamic sounds, how loud, how soft you're playing, maybe crescendos, things like that as well. Even maybe things like staccato or accents, right? That's kind of like that last 10%. But you do want to have goals no matter what. And that's a good kind of reference for you for the short-term goals. Long-term goals, I would say anything between, let's say, 3 to 4 weeks, roughly, right? So 1 to 2 weeks short-term, 3 to 4 weeks was long-term, quote unquote. And this is long-term because, again, as a brand new beginner, you want to be able to get things done. You don't want to be focusing in on one song for 6 months. That's just not going to be as helpful for you. You want to learn the process of learning songs. So a month is plenty for long-term goals. I wouldn't spend more than a month. And the same rule would apply. You want to get 90% of the way there for the long-term songs. So 90% of the way there being you have the notes under your fingers, you have the good phrasing, and you can play it at the right tempo as well. So all that to say, you should set goals. That's going to help you stay on track and help you improve in the best way possible. Point number 4 is you want to just remember to have fun and acknowledge your progress you've made up to this point. So when you do feel overwhelmed, and it will happen no matter what you do, you want to take a moment and just feel like you have made progress. Take a moment and recognize where you were and where you are today. So even if it's something small, again, maybe you learned how to play a new chord. Maybe you learned how to play A flat minor today. And yesterday you did not know how to play A flat minor. Take a moment if you feel overwhelmed, recognize that, recognize the progress you've made, and be appreciative and thankful of the work that you've put in. Maybe it's a whole scale. Maybe you didn't know how to play A flat major scale. Maybe you didn't know how to play G major. Maybe you could only play 2 measures of the song you're working on, and now you can play 4 measures, right? Things like that. Maybe you didn't know how to play a swing eighth note versus a straight eighth note. You didn't know the difference. Maybe now you know. Even super small things like that are going to help you keep you motivated. They're going to help you keep a positive state of mind, and they're going to help you, most importantly, combat that feeling of overwhelm. So whenever you start to feel that, just take a moment, acknowledge where you've been, and appreciate where you are today and compare it to yesterday. And the last fix here is, if you are really serious about the piano, you are really serious about getting better as fast as possible, then you need to have a teacher. That's just the way it is. A teacher is going to show you what you're doing wrong, what you're doing well. They can set out your goals for you. They can set out your practice plan based off what you want to do. If you want to play classical music, rock and roll, jazz, whatever it is, your teacher can help you, guide you through that process. And there's somebody that can hold you accountable. So when you don't feel like practicing, they can help you practice anyway, even if you don't feel like it. And they can help you with your mentality as well. If you're feeling that imposter syndrome or you're feeling that overwhelm, a teacher can help get you back on track. So those are all the things that are tough about piano. Those are a lot of the fixes that you can use when you're just starting the piano. With all that said, I do have a free guide on my website, latestartpiano.com. This free guide has 34 essential tips that brand new beginner adult piano players need to know. We're going to be talking about practice strategies. We're going to be talking about music theory. We're going to be talking about the setup for the piano as well, so you can play everything much easier. You can play everything much faster, and you can play the songs that you love the way you actually want to. It's completely free. Again, it's on my website, www.latestartpiano.com. You can go there, click on that big bright purple button on that page, enter in your name and email address, and you'll have instant access to that free guide. In addition to that, if you are interested in piano lessons, I am offering lessons right now via Zoom. If you're interested in that, send me an email. My email address is latestartpiano@gmail.com. Just let me know what you want to do. We'll set up a schedule for you, and we can get you playing songs that you love as soon as possible. Hope all that helps. Again, my name is Josh LaFleur with Late Start Piano.